Now, this video discusses about the classification of numbers based on the positive number, a negative number, as well as the zero. And also we discuss how we can be able to add or subtract the numbers and also the division of the numbers, and are carefully looking at the signs themselves. So, we have three classes of numbers. We have what we call as the positive number. We have positive numbers. We have what we call them as positive numbers. And we also have what we call as the negative numbers. So it should be that negative numbers. And we also have what we call as a zero. So this is the classification of the numbers in terms of the positive, negative, or zero. So what is a positive number? A positive number, it is the number associated with a sign, the cross. So this is the sign for positive. And the sign for negative, it is given as that. So that is just a horizontal line that is said to be a negative. And what are the examples of the positive number? We can have, let's say, positive 2. This is a positive number. And of course, generally, a positive sign becomes neutral. You can present it as just 2. So this means this is a positive 2, even without indicating the sign. And we can have, let's say, positive 100, which is the same as just say 100. And now we can have it as, let's say, a positive 5, or just have to say, let's say, 10, 15, let's say 50, 5,000. This is a typical positive number. And the sign associated with the number, it is always in front of the number. In this case, we cannot say that we cannot present this one as a 5 positive. So always the sign associated with the number, it is always in front of the number. So in this case, the right way to express positive 5, it means the positive has to be in the front. So have, let's say, positive, let's say a 16. This is the same as 16. So keep that in mind. And how about the negative number? So as I have already put it forward, that negative is actually a negative sign is given as this. So which means, let's say we can have the examples like that should be negative 2, like that. And let's say negative 20, we can have that. Let's say negative 60, we can have, let's say, negative 10. So all these are the negative numbers. And we cannot present the negative number like this. Let's say 2 negative. No, it doesn't work like that. So a sign corresponding to the number, always it becomes faced before the number. We can have, let's say, negative 40. You can have that. Let's say negative 4, like that. And how about 0? So a 0 is always given as this. And basically 0, it's a neutral number. It cannot have a positive or negative. It is just the way it is there. There's no positive 0 and there's no negative 0. It is just a neutral case. Now let us see how we can multiply or divide the numbers, and basically in terms of the positive or negative. That's the point of interest. Now here is the clue. Whenever we are multiplying two negative numbers, let's say negative, by the way, let me take it back first. What is the multiplication? So basically multiplication, this is the process of increasing actually 2 or more numbers. That's the multiplication. As the name itself suggests, that's a case of increasing two or increasing two or more numbers, that's a multiplication. And multiplication takes the symbol of, should be this. So that's the symbol for multiplication. And we can also have to use the brackets. Also, that's the symbol for multiplication. And for example, we can have, let's say, if we have a number presented as, let's say if we have a positive number given as 2, and then times the positive number given as, let's say, given as 5. Having this one, it is the same as having it as 2, in the brackets, and also 5 in the brackets. So that is also a case of multiplication. And we can also have, let's say, a negative number 5, and it times negative number, let's say 10. Having this one, you can also present that one as negative 5, times negative 10. You can have it in that way. So this bracket shows that that's a multiplication. And we can also have, let's say, a positive number 20, and let's say times, let's say, a positive number should be given as half. And also this is the same as having 20 in the brackets and it times half, like that. So those are the ways how you can present the multiplication. And apart from that, we can also present the multiplication case using the decimal point. So having, let's say, 2 times, let's say, 5, we understand that this is the same as having it as 2 in the brackets and 5 in the brackets, but also this is the same as having 2.5, so which means 2 times 5. And we can also have, let's say, negative 5 and the times, let's say, negative, let's say, 7. Of course, this is the same as negative 5 and times negative 7 can be that. And also this is the same as having a 5 dot, and that should be this. Let me have it over here. This is also the same as having it as negative 5 dot negative 7. So the multiplication can also be presented in terms of what we get as the decimal point. And now we can have, let's say, negative 50 times, let's say, negative 100. You can have that. And according to the principle behind, this is the same as negative 50 in the brackets and also negative 100 in the brackets. And also this is the same as having it as negative 50 dot negative 100. So we can also present that one in that way, as you can see. And how about the division of the numbers? So a division, the process of the division is more associated with the sign given as, this is the symbol for division. And also the same symbol can be presented as, and that should be this. We can also have that one. So this is the symbol for division, and also this is also the symbol for division. And for example, we can have, let's say, a number 5 divided by, let's say, a number 4. This is the same as having it as, and that should be given as, we'll have 4 here and we'll have 5 here. So this is a case of the division. And we can also have, let's say, a number 10 divided by, let's say, a number, let's say, 6. This is the same as having it as, having it as should be a 10 and this is a 6. So which means in this case a 6 is entering into actual 10. So 10 is divided by 6. And we can also have, let's say, a number 50 divided by, we can also divide by, let's say, 5. So in this case, this is the same as having it as, and that should be 5, and that should be 50 here. So that's what it means. And another way of presenting the division of the numbers is that you express them in terms of the fractions. So it is to express them in terms of the fractions, or we call that as expressing them in terms of the rational numbers. So in this case, let's say we have the same actually problems, and let's make use of the same problems. So I was saying we can be able to present, we can also present the division of this division of the numbers in terms of the fraction, or we call it as in terms of the ratio. So ratio is the same as the fraction. So in this case, this is the same as 5 over 4. So we did it in that way, 5 over 4. And I can also have 10 over 6. And also we can have it as 50 over 5. So that is how we can also present the division of the numbers in that way. So which means if we can have, let's say, a number given as, let's say, negative 20 divided by, let's say, negative 6. You know, this is the same as having it as negative 20 divided by, should be over negative 6. And also if we can have, let's say, a number given as m divided by, let's say, xy. You know, this is the same as having it as m divided by xy, according to the principle behind. So that there are three ways in which the division of the numbers can be presented. Either we can present it as in form of a fraction, or we can present it as using the division sign like that. So how can you be able to divide, how can you be able to multiply numbers? And basically in terms of whether they are positive numbers or negative numbers. So here are the rules you have to understand. If we have a negative, so if we have a negative times negative, and the overall result becomes the positive. So the result becomes the positive. And if we are multiplying the negative number, let's say a negative number, and that times the positive number, and the overall result becomes the negative. So the overall result becomes the negative. So by the way, we can also present this as, you know, a negative times the negative. So the result becomes the positive. And a negative times the positive, and the result becomes, and that as the negative. And if we are having, let's say, a positive, you should have to write this one down in your notes, by the way. A positive, and times the positive, and the result becomes the positive. So which means if we have, let's say, a positive times positive, you know, the result becomes the positive as well. So the result becomes the positive. And this does not care about the this does not care about the way you have, this doesn't care about the order. We can have, let's say, a positive times the negative, it also be the same. No, it doesn't care about the order itself. So keep that in mind. So let's try how we can have to understand the following. By the way, you can also use calculator. Basically, if calculator is allowed, you can also actually verify using the calculator thing as well. Let's say if we have, so I should also go for the a division of the numbers as well before I go further. So how should we have to divide the numbers? So in terms of the signs. So now the rules behind is that a negative number divided by the negative, the overall result becomes the positive. So mind you, having this one is the same as the negative divided by the negative, and which is the same as the negative over negative. So this is the same as the positive. So the result becomes the positive. So whenever we are dividing the negative numbers, the overall result becomes the positive. In other words, the answer becomes the positive. And if we have the negative divided by the positive, the overall result becomes the negative. So which is the same as the negative divided by the positive, and which is the same as the negative divided by the positive. The overall result becomes the positive. And likewise, if we have the positive divided by the positive, which is the same as the positive, the overall result becomes the positive. It is the same as having the positive divided by the positive, also which is the same as the positive over positive. The overall result becomes the positive. So write down those actual notations as you be going through them always and always, because mathematics needs you to practice a lot. So you should no longer be a victim of the science. Now let's say if we have, let's say, a 10, let's say 10 times, let's say, negative 2. So how do you think we should have that on us? So as you can see, 10 is a positive. So we have 10 as a positive, and we have 2 as the negative. So in this case, according to the law behind, a positive times the negative, the overall result becomes the negative. So in this case, we'll have 2 times 10, which is 20, but that 20 will be a negative 20. So have negative 20. And how about, let's say, if we have negative 2 times, let's say, negative 5. So how should you have it? So in this case, we're having the product. By the way, multiplication is the same as the product. So we have the negative times the negative. And what is the overall result? We have it as a positive, according to the law behind. So in this case, we'll have it as 2 times 10, actually 2 times 5, which is 10. But now, since all numbers are negatives, we'll have a positive 10. And how about, let's say, if we have, let's say 5 divided by, let's say, negative 2. Now how should you have this? So in this case, this is the same as, now 5 is a positive number, so have a positive, divided by the negative. So what is the overall result if this is the case? Mind you, having this case is the same as the positive divided by negative, and the overall result becomes the negative, should be negative. So in that case, it means we'll have the overall expression, being given as, there should be 5 over negative 2. So we can have it as that. And also, it is the same as having negative 5 over 2. Now, at this point, it doesn't matter whether negative can be here or it can be here, or it can also be presented as this. Negative 5 over 2. It is the same as that. So no matter how we can be present that on us, but principle remains the same there. And how about, let's say, if we can have, let's say, negative 2, let's say negative 5, negative, let's say 3, this should be that. And also, let's say positive, let's say 6. Let me just have to use it as a positive 2. Now, how should you have the solution for this? So now, first thing you should have to consider the size of the numbers involved. We have, this is a negative, and the times, we have a negative, times negative, and the times positive. So what is the overall result here? So a negative gives a positive. So which means the combination of these two will have the positive. And the negative, positive, what is the combination? The combination of these two will have the negative, because the negative times positive, the overall result becomes the negative. So we have actually a negative, or should be a positive times negative. So what is the overall result? We'll have the overall result being given as the negative. So which means no matter what, we just have to multiply the numbers, but the overall answer should be given as the negative answer. So take note of that. So in this case, we have a 2 times 5, which is 10, and 10 times 3, which is 30, and 30 times 2, which is, and that should be negative 60. We'll have the negative 60 there. And you can also verify this using your calculator. You also have it in the same way. How about, let's say, if we have negative 1, and let's say times, that should be negative, let's say 6, and let's say divide by, and that should be negative, let's say 2, and the minus, I should be times, let's say negative, let's say a 1 as well, and the times, let's say negative, let's say 6. Now how should you have the overall thing about this? Now first thing, we are multiplying here. So this is the same as, in this case, we are having the negative times negative. So which corresponds to have the positive. And here we have, the divide by, we have a negative, which is a positive. In this case, we have a negative at the end. So we have the negative here. Then in this case, we have a negative, actually a positive and the negative. What is the overall result here? We have the negative. So in this case, the final thing will be positive versus negative. And you see that the overall answer will be given as the negative, because actually a positive divided by the negative, whatever we have there, it will be given as the negative. So that's how you can actually deduce the overall sign of your answer, and given it in that way. So let's see how we can have it there, and from our analysis. So have the 1 times 6, that is a 6, and since they are all negatives, the overall answer will be given as the positive. So have positive 6, and divide by, then we'll have negative 2 times negative 1, that is a positive 2, and the times C, we have negative 6. So positive 2 times negative 6, we'll have it as a negative 12. So the final expression will be given as 6, divided by negative 12. So with your calculator, you have it in this number, you can have it in the fraction upon simplifying what we have there. As the common factor being given as 6, have it as 1 over negative 2. So that is how you can have it there in terms of the signs. So a piece of reminder: a positive number times the positive number, the overall result becomes the positive. And the negative times the negative, the overall result becomes the negative. The positive times negative becomes the negative. No matter the order itself. So it should be that. And also the negative, divided by the negative, the overall result becomes the positive. And the negative divided by the positive, the result becomes the negative. And should be that. And the positive divided by the positive, the result becomes the positive as well. So take note of that. Now, how should we have to add or subtract the numbers in terms of the signs? So before we go further, I want you to understand about the number line. So you should be able to understand about the number line. So a number line is actually it is the horizontal line, that shows the presentation of the numbers, starting from the origin, which is either to positive infinity or the negative infinity. Let me present it properly here. So we have it like that. So in this case we have the origin being given as 0. So this is the origin. So the numbers from 0 to the right hand side keeps on going, increasing, keeps on increasing up to the infinity. So that's the positive infinity. And the numbers from 0, towards the left keeps on decreasing up to the negative infinity. So infinity does not specify the real value. So infinity can be a very large number that we cannot think about. So in that case, starting from 0, let's think of having, let's say, 1, let's say 2, let's say 3, and let's say 4, up to infinity. Let's say the numbers are keep on going. And let's think of having -1, -2. So by the way, the numbers to the left hand side of 0, since they keeps on decreasing, they're more associated with the negative. So have negative, let's say 3, and let's say -4, like that. And the scale used here, it is about the 1 unit. But we can have, let's say, -5, -10, negative should be 15, 20, like that. Whatever the scale of your interest, but for the sake of interest, I just have to make use of this kind of the scale itself. But always there, it's the origin of the number line. So this is the origin. That's the beginning of everything. So that is the origin. And to the right hand side of 0, the numbers are positives. Likewise here, the numbers are negatives. So you should be able to know about the number line in terms of the components and characteristics as well. And now, how do we add or subtract the numbers? Let's say if we have, let's say, a minus, let's say b. Let me start with, let's say, a plus b. How should you come up with a solution for this kind of expression? So in this case, of course, using the calculator, it will give the directly actually a solution. But I want you to make use of the number line to understand the inside of how it comes that the solution can be like that. So in this case, if we are having a plus b, now, so in this case, having a plus b, you should have to understand that the first number, which is a, it is the reference number. So this is reference number. That is a reference number or value. So that is a reference value. And a b, number of steps. Number of steps, you should have 2. Now in this case, b shows the number of steps. We are to move from the reference number. So if b is positive, it means we need to move about b steps from a towards the right. That is, if b is positive, we need to move actually b steps from the reference number a towards the right. And otherwise, if b is negative, it means we need to move actually b steps and from a towards the left. So take note of that. Now let's see how we can have the following and appreciate the basis behind addition or subtraction of numbers, and basically in terms of the signs. Let's say we have 2 minus, let's say 3. Now how should we have the way out of this case? So in this case, 2 is a reference. So where is the 2? We have a 2 here. So this is 2. And in this case, this 3 is actually a negative. So since it's negative, we are to move 3 steps towards the left of B. That is towards the left of 2. Actually from 2. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we have traveled about 3 steps reaching this far. So which means 2 minus 3, we have it as the negative 2. Actually it should be negative 1. Even if you can verify with a calculator, you have that one. So keep that in mind. How about, let's say, if we can have something like this. Let's say we have it as 3 minus, let's say, 1 in this case. Now how should you have the solution for this? Now first thing, 3 is a reference point, so have a 3 here. That's the difference. And we need to move about a 1 step. So since actually 1 is a negative, so we need to move about a 1 step towards the left of actually a 3. So in this case, we'll have to just have to move a single step. We are here. So which means 3 minus 1, that is given as 2. That is the way out. We'll have that and as that. And how about, let's say, if we can have, and that should be negative, let's say 3 minus, and let's say minus, let's say 4. So how should you have the solution for this? Now first thing, we should have to understand that negative times negative is the same as the positive. So which means we'll have negative 3 and a plus 4. It is the same as that. And we should take it from here. So be minded that this sign represents the multiplication. So which means we'll have negative times negative, like that. And I'll take it from here. So negative 3 is a reference point. So have negative 3 here. And since this is a positive number, we need to move about 4 steps towards the right of 3. So have, this is step number 1, 2, 3, 4. So which means we are to stop here. So in that case, negative 3 plus 4 is the same as 1. So that is the solution. And how about, let's say, if we can have this? Let's say if we can think of having something like this. Let's say we have negative, let's say 6, negative, and negative, let's say, let me just have, to include some values. Let me just have to increase the number. Right, in that way, let's say, should have negative 5, negative 6, let's say negative 7, like that. That is for the sake of interest, but this is enough to express more about the number line. Let's say we have negative 6, let's say negative, let's say 2. So how should you have this? So there is need of rewriting this. So having that one is the same as negative 6, negative, that is positive. So have positive 2. And you take it from here. So negative 6 is the reference point. We'll have negative 6. That's the reference point. So since this is positive, we need to move about 2 steps to the right of 6. So have a step 1, 2. So we are here. So what is the value here? We have negative 2 up to negative 4. So which means negative 6 plus 2, that is negative 4. So always you should have to think about the number line whenever you are adding or subtracting numbers. It gives you a very big picture to understand about these things. And let's say if we have, let's say 5, there should be, we have, let's say 4, plus minus, let's say, 5. Now, how should you have the solution for this? Now, first thing, we should have to express this one first. So positive times negative is the same as 4 minus 5, because negative, actually positive negative is the same as the negative. So we'll have it like that. Then we'll take it from here. So in that way, 4 is the reference point. So this is our 4 here. And since this is the negative, we need to move about actually 5 steps towards, the left of 4. So which means we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are at -1. So which means 4 minus 5 is the same as the -1. So that is how you should have to understand about adding or subtraction of the numbers like that. And now let's say if we have the following, you should have to try this at your own times. Let's say we have -12 and plus, let's say, plus 6, and let's say, let me just have this, and let's say minus, let's say 4, and plus minus, let's say 2. So without the use of the calculator, how should you have this? So first thing, this is a negative number, which is 12. This is the positive number, we'll have that one. We just have to eliminate the brackets first. So we have negative times negative, that is a positive 4. And by the way, the ones that I'm multiplying here, they are the signs, not 6 times 4, no. So we have positive 4, and positive times negative, we have -2. Then we'll take it from here using the concept of the body mass. Then you see which one we can start adding first. But any order will give us the same. So we can start with this. Then we can come for this. So in this case, -12 plus 6. So -12 being reference, and since this is the positive, moving 6 steps towards the light of -12, you will see that we'll stop at -6. You have plus 2 minus, 4 minus 2. 4 being reference, and this is being negative, 2 steps towards the left of 2. Towards the left of 4, we'll have it as a +2. So the overall answer will be given as, and that should be -6 plus 2, -6 being reference, and the 2 being positive. We need to move about 2 steps towards the light of -6, and that will be given as, and that should be -4. So this is the solution. So try the following at your own time and appreciate those. And say we have -1 in the terms, let's say -5, and plus -10, and minus -2, plus, let's say, -10. That's all. How should you have that? And let's say -half, minus, let's say, 2, plus, let's say, -5, plus minus, let's say, -2, and the minus, let's say, 7. So how should you have the solution for those? And let's say we should have -6 minus, let's say, 7. How should you have that? And you try without the use of the calculator, then you should have to confirm with your calculator as well. Let's say -8, -6, plus, let's say, 4 minus -2. How should you have that? So try to express those at your own time. So that is how you should have to understand about the numbers, and also with respect to their signs when dividing and multiplication, as well as the subtraction and even the addition. Thank you.